Great. So, welcome. Hello, everyone. Hello, future listeners. I'm with a friend and colleague and kind of co-creator, Shante Zenith. And I'm really happy to have you here, in part because we don't have a ton of like personal one-on-one connections, but we've like drifted and we've been, classmates in the Animist Arts cohort, and then also kind of drifting in the same field in our creations and offerings and on the internet world. And so I one motivation to have this conversation with you is just to really learn more from you and hear more about the work that you've been doing, because it's so my observations of it is it's so poetic, it's so intuitive and unfolding, um, non non-templated. I don't know what the word I want to use there, but like um and yeah, just a really beautiful artistic orientation to um, relating with our world and our bodies and hopefully a healthier version of culture. Those are my words, I guess. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself in your words, and yeah, where would you start with telling us who you are, where you are, what's
Mm.
present time for you?
Mhm. Well, I am in Minnesota Makoche, the homelands of the Dakota people, and my people are Celtic, uh, like Nordic, Slavic, and Ashkenazi Jewish, and so yeah, those are some kind of main orienting threads. I was also born, I wasn't there for very long, but I was born in Hawaii on Maui. And so that land body, I haven't been back since, but there's like a relationship with that particular land body also
Mm.
that I feel. Um, the core of my practice is around webbing relationship that has been kind of dissociated from within colonial capitalist cognitive structures.
Mhm.
So relationship to body, to like organic impulses for movement and nourishment, relationship to land and ecosystem, nature beings, relationship to rooted ancestor beings, um, and then this sense of the kind of how all of the beings are singing and weaving together. Um, so that takes a bunch of different shapes. I have a writing practice and wrote a thesis project called Make Your Body the Prayer that was like an oracle deck that was a part of that, and these channeled writings with land beings and ancestor beings, and that's like working on writing a book based on that.
Mm.
And then I'm like just kind of beginning as a facilitator. I have a support group for people with energetic sensitivity and chronic illness called Ecosystem Spoons. And I'm starting to do some one-on-one session work with somatic coaching, and then also around creative process and supporting people in kind of wider webs of relationship with that too.
Yeah.
So those are some things. There's some
Those
other
are
things too,
something.
but we'll start there.
Yeah. Well, and I'm even feeling like kind of the carryover from, we did a little check-in and invocation before we started recording, and I'm hearing you kind of rename some of those beings we said hello to. And so, yeah, that was, Shante, you called it the preliminary hello. And so we're kind of in the secondary hello, like just the layers gathering in. So yeah, thank you for naming all of those. I guess I notice in hearing that, and again, because like I don't know you super well at a personal level, like, would you be willing to share how have you come to this place? How have you come to this study and practice?
Mhm.
Yeah, whatever of that journey that feels alive right now to share.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I think what's like coming up right now is just there have been these particular experiences that I've had as someone with chronic illness, and like just recently starting to contextualize my life through the lens of neurodiversity.
Mm,
Just like has been there the whole time, but
yeah.
is just a vocabulary I'm starting to learn. That I am autistic and I have ADHD. Um, that there have been these ways that even though my family is very like steeped in white culture and the perceptual narrowings of that, there have been these ways where my body and my perceptual experiences don't fit. Um, and since I was really young, there's just been this sense of wanting this kind of support and presence and dropped in listening, that just was not accessible most of the time. And most people in my life, almost all of the people in my life until the last couple of years, just didn't hadn't kind of had the developmental support to be able to access. So that kind of absence, and longing, then became this pull, into a lot of different like relationships with nature beings, trying to connect with my ancestors, and for a while I was really steeped in practice around grief ritual and looking at all of the ancestral trauma and the pain that my ancestors carried and perpetuated. And while I was doing that, I was also very uncomfortable in my own body, very dissociated and very like still in this kind of pushing through, a lot of sort of masking or
Mm,
uh, trying to fit into this acceptable shape of what I thought human was supposed to be,
mm,
feeling like that wasn't aligned with who I was. And then my like with chronic illness and like the different sensitivities to mold, has been like a main one. My body just reached a point of just stopping me, and like I've the last couple of years I've had to completely shift my relational patterns, completely shift how I've been living. I haven't been able to work for like a year and a half as part of this process, so I also experienced the both the like the complexity of the social safety net systems and where they're not actually supporting,
yeah.
and amazing ways in which mutual aid has been able to meet some of my needs.
Yeah.
And my dog is joining me on the chair now.
Speaking of support.
Speaking of support being, yes, this is Shia.
Oh,
Um,
sweetie.
uh, but basically the last couple of years have been the time in which I just couldn't ignore these kind of ecological, organic arisings from my system anymore, and just
Mhm.
have had to like meet them again and again. I've been did it have just completed a my first master's was in kind of exploring grief ritual, and um, art making and ecological imagination. And then my second master's, which partly is because I like to study and partly is because the like infrastructure of school and the student loans was actually really helpful as a disabled person.
Yeah.
Um, but the second study was into embodiment and this sense of the relationship between nervous system and ecosystem.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so all that has kind of led me to here.
Yeah. Yeah. There's several threads that light up in that for me. Maybe I'll just kind of lay them out and you can feel which ones you want to pull on a little bit. Let's see. I noticed first, well, this is kind of drawing on, some of the work I've seen you doing circulating. Um, and you mentioned like your first masters and like the original movement of your work, being around grief ritual and exploring some of that ancestral trauma. And I've noticed your language moving from the like trauma informed to nurture informed or nourish informed.
Yeah.
And so that's one thread that I thought would be really beautiful to explore. Another thread that I was hearing was, I think, just going back to like that longing you described from your family of origin, like the ways that kind of your unique ways of experiencing and seeing the world weren't being met. Um, and I guess I'm wondering, like, what did you know about the longing? Did it feel like there was something missing, but you didn't know what it was, or did you have a clear sense of what it was and it not being matched, or like how did you describe that? How would you have described that while you were in it? Like
Mm.
that's one thread. um,
Can we start there?
let's pause there.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, yeah, because that feels really potent. Because I think it's some of it's been the same and some of it's changed. Um, there's always been a part of my system that just knows this different kind of presence and listening is
Okay.
possible.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think almost even before I experienced it. And I would catch little moments of it, like in the grief ritual spaces, or with different teachers that I resonated with. Um, but so there was kind of this like orienting towards that, but also this in my own history and in my family's history, this like generations of kind of wounded attachment, and this merging dynamic, or this kind of so identifying with existence coming from somebody outside of you that you kind of leave yourself to become indispensable to them and like
Mm,
seen by them so you can exist.
mm,
And I was having experiences for like my teens and 20s of my relational patterns like consistently ending in rupture, where I would have those kind of like overly merged emotionally intense dynamics with people, and then a trauma bubble would show up for one of us and we wouldn't have capacity to
repair or contain.
repair, witness what happened, and it would just the relationship would just end. And that was like my pattern with teachers and mentors also. um, and so the last couple of years there's been this huge shifting into the gift of having a couple people who were skilled enough to be with me with the kind of attachment complexity of like just needing that presence, but have like very skillful boundaries around it,
Yeah.
that also were able to move with me as I grew.
Yeah.
Um, and there's one mentor specifically, who I started working with her, like doing bodywork sessions, receiving bodywork sessions from her, and on a like really basic level starting to reestablish my sense of like where like for a while, like it was, she has a thing in her practice where she, you know, she'll say like stay hands off if you know, ever like need the energetic space. And I realized that I had this energetic sensitivity that was so intense to like people kind of entering into my field or to touch. And I had to sort of make so much space and pause around that before I could start to like allow people in again.
Mhm.
So there's been this whole kind of process of starting to resensitize my like my edges and my like very personal space,
Yeah.
um, in both like a physical way but also in a really energetic way. And then the training with Darren Larissa at Animist Arts, with the pieces around like this sense of discerning center, and the just right amount, and that there's this engagement with this wider body of the earth, wider body of the ancestors, but it comes from this, you know, organismic awareness of right timing, right amount, and being able to start to modulate that.
Mhm.
And so that the desire for that deep presence and listening, um, which I originally identified with like people and
Yeah.
kind of needing to get it from someone.
Yeah.
um, a core theme in my writing and my practice has been around then like learning that process of what allows for that to be like quote like self-generated, um, in the sense that it's not like it comes from the small self, but it comes from this like relational field, and that does need kind of all of these moments of exposure and tissuing with other people who are able to hold that space or ritual spaces, but that over time it's possible to grow more of this sense of this like this field of existing, um, and that presence and listening and like just ease in being, um, can become move closer to like more of a baseline,
Yeah.
um, which I'm like dancing in and out of, and I don't think it's perfect for anybody, but it like can be like, and that's the nourishment informed piece too, that when I was so focused on this like heal the trauma, you know, like there's almost this kind of like feeling of this like wall, that is like all the support and nourishment is on the other side of the wall if I can just break through and heal the things.
Yeah.
And a huge shifting for me is realizing like the support is on both sides. It's like
Mm,
it's never not there.
that's good.
And that perceptual shifting to be able to attune to it,
Right.
allows for other possibilities.
Yeah. Like a kind of widening of the hyperfixation on the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to circle back to a piece, um, because it came up in one of the containers I was facilitating around this, like, like being able to access self nurture or like co regulation with beings beyond our primary attachment and bodies beyond our primary attachment, whether partner, human, mother, mother figure, whatever. And I got like I had a response from a client once about it that was like, well, that I have avoidant attachment, so I can already do that. Like like and it's an oversimplification, like those attachment categories are, overly can be overly rigid or whatever, overly categorized. But I've really been trying to feel out like what's the difference between having like co-regulation with many bodies, having the capacity to self-nourish, and being like avoidantly attached, um self-reliant or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So any comments about that?
I mean, I think that, I mean, like, I answered in a slightly roundabout way.
Great, yeah.
For me, it comes down to whether the aloneness, silence, space is perceived as like a void that's just very like desolate and kind of grating, and like they're like just kind of these like thought loops of like trying to, be in past or future and resolve something or figure something out, or whether there's an ability to perceive that silence and space as filled with nourishment and a kind of like deeply loving consciousness.
Yeah.
um and that's not like a switch that can be flipped. It's like literally is this like neurological shifting process that happens over time through, like, my sense of it is through like being in the presence of energetic fields that are open to that, whether that's a person or a group, and nature beings can definitely be like that too. But there's, I think part of it too, one of the concepts I play with is, they talk about, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain, and how the left hemisphere, which is the like very linear, kind of take something out of the wider context and try and objectify it and, understand it,
Yeah.
how that's associated with sympathetic activation in the nervous system, this, like fight, flight, intense,
Yeah.
like do the
Really-
things, push through.
Yeah.
um and and then the right hemisphere is more that like rest and digest, deep rooting and resourcing into the wider web energy. And I've been playing with this sense of seed mind and forest mind,
Hmm.
as a way to describe them, because it's not that they're actually a binary. It's
Right.
that like one is like the entirety of reality,
Yeah.
and one is, and the other is, like one little concentrated aspect of that that has, you know been for the moment forgotten that it exists in that wider web, and kind of has this hard protective shell of self around it.
Yeah.
But when it goes back in and the conditions are right for the roots to kind of unfurl, it can remember. um so I feel like the like self-reliance piece is the like when we're in that seed mind space, um which is like totally a learned way of responding to the life context that we're in. um
Yeah, and maybe like is functional, right?
yeah, totally.
Like in a good way. Like we need the sympathetic nervous system to like get up out of bed in the morning, or like to run when there is danger, or take a stand. So yeah, that has like a contextual function, but that easily gets frozen.
And that like playing with the kind of the layering or the folding of like how can that part that is more about the like, isolated self doing something in the world still be held and still perceive that wider
Yeah.
webbing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's like one piece about the nervous system stuff that drives me crazy is they talk about it like it's a state and another state.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's like this constant like layering of these things that like there's always something on either side of it. Yeah.
Mhm. What is nourishing you right now, or in this season?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I think it's learning the just right way to like ask for and receive help,
Mhm.
um, and how that has been such a dance for me and kind of that navigation of like where is it more leaning into receiving and being held, and where is it more kind of initiating and moving. um like on a very basic level, I my kind of safety net after like a year and a half of chronic illness and stuff is like very exhausted. Like my mom has been like helping me financially, and her capacity to do that is like very limited, at this point. And I reapplied for food stamps after I forgot to do the recertification. And so I've had these couple of months where I've been like at the most kind of survival mode, um, like navigating food insecurity and like, am I going to have enough to get my supplements and like basic things like that. And it, in the, like, it has been really terrifying for chunks of that time. But at the same time, like the thing that has shifted for me the most in this last year is I've really been, and part of it is like I have like the gift of space and time to do that because of the like how chronic illness has slowed me down and made space in my life. So it's this whole paradox. But I've really been focusing on cultivating friendships and like weaving relationship with the people in my life. And I have done like a basic thing. Like I have about 8 friends who I do this like weekly text check-in with. So we just like, I'm like arbitrarily choose a day of the week, and one of us will text the other, even if that means like, hi, my text is I don't want to talk right now. And so that it took like 6 months of doing that to start to kind of establish like more organic like communication and just reaching out to each other, because a lot of the people in my life, we seem to kind of navigate similar things around neurodiversity and object permanence.
Yes.
Other human permanence, if not in the same relational space.
Totally.
But once we kind of had that going, then it's like for the first time in my life, there have actually been people I can be sharing with and, having a phone call with and saying like, hey, I'm having this really hard stuff happening. And not feeling like, not being afraid they're going to like try and rescue me.
Mhm.
But also that they can like be with me in the complexity of it. And I've had this huge shifting happen around like doing this health fundraiser for this like ridiculously outrageous, for me it feels like an outrageous amount of money, of like what my health expenses and living expenses would be if, like, it's, I literally, what it comes from is literally like looking at the government programs which I'm supposed to be in but have like very, like 2-year wait lists.
Oh my
And then being like, what would happen if I just like asked for that? And not necessarily that like that will happen as, the only thing that will support me, but just there was like a energetic shifting in my system when I like was really curious about what do I actually need in order to shift these patterns, and what happens if I ask for that. So there was like a layer where I like launched that fundraiser and kind of like shared that kind of vulnerability with the world, and then received like some donations, and that's been incredibly helpful and allowed me to eat the last couple of months. And also like I'm like, and it's capitalism and we're all struggling, and so trying to then find ways that I can like be moving forward with my practice even while navigating executive dysfunction and different things, and having all these like layers of support show up around that also. So it's interesting. It's like very much like like I would like to have like been done by now and like
Oh,
just doing the thing. and
I hear that. Mhm.
and something I've noticed for me and for like different friends, and I think this is kind of a common experience for us like witchy, energetically sensitive humans, um is that there seem to be these places in our lives that are like irrationally difficult. And like from the outside, like looking in, it's like, that's so obvious how you could just like do the thing, you know? And then from the inside, it's like, but I cannot just like, there's something else being worked out, you know? And that like you and Natalie were talking about initiation. And I feel like it's like, it kind of lives there in that like crunchy double bind space. And like, how do we be with each other in that space without rescuing, you know, but also like having just that web of support. So
Yeah.
that was a bleh.
No, it's so, I mean, one, I am appreciating your vulnerability even now, and like, you know, there are hard things. Like, you were moving through some really hard and complex things, and I've watched some of your processing of like relating to our quote unquote social service, I guess quote unquote service, um, social services, as beings that exist in our field, um, and how, and like having enough of a, I guess, foundation in your practice to, I hear, of course, not always, but be able to turn practice and turn those circumstances into practice and ritualize how you're relating to that process. And it's, I'm hearing you, even like the word choice of like, it's terrifying. Like, as you were describing, I was feeling all this sensation like through the right side of my body, like just this sort of tingling, um, I don't know, like alertness or kind of waking upness. And like, those things are super real. Like, I mean, the terror of oblivion is real. Like, the terror of our body not having what it needs to be sustained is so primal and real. And yeah, so and it's so like, your story is so much a part of a bigger story that I think our world is moving through, and maybe has always been moving through in different forms. But the way I perceive and kind of experience you is like so close to the ground with what you're metabolizing and like connecting to, but with enough of a, like a, I don't know, antenna to sky, or deep down, like enough of a like connection point to some bigger awareness that you can put words to the experience. You can even can be guiding others through it. Like, it does seem pretty magical that you are holding space for people at the same time, like metabolizing the thing you're going through, and not in a closeted way. Like, you're very honest about like the shit going down. And yeah, I guess I just really want to lift that up. And um there was one other piece in there that I was like,
Can I respond to what you just said and then weave in
yeah,
back? Because that, I mean, that's still like a huge edge for me, is this navigation of like, what part of myself am I showing on social media, and like what is there space for? And for about a year, I was like, I can't be a practitioner and have a health fundraiser. Like, you know, I still did it, but there was just this like dissonance of like, this capitalist reality doesn't have space for like both things to exist. Um, and I'm still in the questioning of that, and even like what I share, and when I'm like, the times when I like share like publicly about, you know, food insecurity, or like the saga of the whole the latest with the disability application process, where I'm trying to appeal and like for 30 days. I have had the whole application appeal done on the computer, and I press submit and I get this error message. I have like 10 screenshots of this error
That's so
message
much. I know.
from,
Yeah.
and um so it's just like things like that where like I know I am not alone. Like I'm among many, 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 many people in different, contexts, living with similar circumstances. And it feels like in the moments when I can speak to it, like there's the presencing of those things, which often there's such a weight of shame on, or such a weight of like, you know, like, don't say that you don't have food this week because it's going to make people uncomfortable.
Yeah. You don't want to look desperate. You want
Yeah.
to, yeah. Mm.
And it's still this huge dance. Like I had a really big shift in my life this last week of, for the first time, like having a health flare, where I had a migraine and nausea all day. And I didn't have any food in the fridge that I could eat, without like intense like sensory sensitivities happening. And my mom not having enough money to help. And I was able to text like 6 of my friends and be like, mutual aid request if anyone can Venmo me. And, and they had like just the right amount of like little donations that I could order groceries. And that was like such a, for my system to be able to do that and not feel huge shame or contraction, like I've just ruined those friendships.
Yeah.
And whew, yeah, so it's just, it is like, it definitely feels like the area in which my existence and the beings who are shaping my life are like wanting me to learn from and find ways to then, yeah, like, yeah, be with, but also like moving at the pace of bodies at the same
Yeah.
time.
The thing that kind of brings me back around to is this subtle, the like kind of the interplay and like subtle distinctions around um like what it means to be in mutuality, I guess, and what is mutual aid that isn't rescuing, that doesn't um where neither where all parties are like in their right capacity and in their right like power, if that's not too vague a word, like, and for, like, I know one thing that in my community we're still working out is like for people who are more often in the needing to ask for aid role, like what does it look like to build asking resilience, where sometimes you're going to get a no,
Yeah.
but and sometimes that no is like a limit of capacity on this side, and sometimes it's actually this is something I think you can do, and I'm here and I'll sit right next to you and let's do this. So I don't know, anything you have to want to respond to in that.
Yeah, that hugely resonates, because I think that like I'm navigating that in my system of like where I think I need help and the like vision of that, and then the like this other piece which is more around building capacity as a practitioner, and not even as a practitioner but as a like marketing and like executive function and these other things that like, which I'm so like, oh, because I graduated, I spent about 3 weeks in total tunnel vision developing this online course and this whole like, bunch of offerings I was going to do. And I put those out onto social media. And then I was totally burned out. had no energy to actually like engage or do the like marketing or the relational process to, and I realized there were, I made the offerings very much like I asked for help a little bit, but it was very much in like my own little bubble. And so I had to like completely let all of the stuff I made just kind of dissolve.
Mhm.
And that was the moment when I'm like, oh, I am autistic and I have ADHD and I have like gone 30 years of my life without having any awareness of that.
Mhm.
Um, and just because it was like I had a conversation with a friend who was recently diagnosed, and I was, listen, like watching, people talk about it on social media, and like just there was a point where the puzzle pieces just like went, and there were waves of, grief, but the relief that I felt about like not being broken
Yeah.
was just epic because
Yeah.
it helped me understand that they're just like, there are aspects of my life where I have a lot of resource and capacity. And there are other aspects that have just been immense struggles, like basic things about tending my house and,
Yeah.
like consistency um,
And the
and
like, why is it back to the like, why is this so difficult for me?
right, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, I know I have chronic illness, so maybe it's just that. But even on the good days, like, and so it really felt like this, like this something clicked into place with that
Mm.
where I could just like um make space for where I actually am in
Mhm.
a different way. And like since then I'm really like I'm trying to navigate that and trying to navigate as often in this culture, like those moments where we need to recalibrate and pause are often, you know, there isn't a cultural support for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a lot of words that I just said.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm feeling like a lot of energy has been moving in this
I
conversation.
know, I know.
I'm surprised by it, and it's
I'm
yeah.
glad for that. I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of things like creating and clearing and connecting. And I mean, actually the thing that I was just hearing, and I don't have a specific line or like direct line, but like I'm hearing the like the encounter with no, like the encounter with limit. Um, Even when I was making these like hand gestures of like, and or so you put the offer out there and it's like now hitting the limit of your body, maybe even like not getting a response. I find that for me, like
Oh yeah,
I
that too.
wanted this and I'm putting it out there and now tickets or whatever, and the thing has to dissolve. And um I don't know, so I guess I'm hearing both the no, the presence of the no, um maybe as teacher or guide, or I don't know, adversary, however. And also, well, it's back to the dissolution, like
Mm-hmm.
building and expecting and like not being surprised, or recovering from the surprise when dissolution is still part of the cycle. Like,
Like it's not done yet.
yeah. I was thinking about this recently, like, because in one of my facilitation groups, like we did a whole theme around compost, and there became this sort of like, a little bit. I mean, it's great I really love being lighthearted about all the things we do, but there was this sort of like, I don't know, quippy or like, yeah, they'll just let it compost. Everything goes to compost, and sort of like flippant, I guess maybe is the word. And then I was really thinking about and kind of like feeling into like compost means total breakdown of what has been into sludge, like into disgustingness, like into nothing that anyone wants to be in. I mean, healthy compost actually can smell really nice, but anyway, I just was kind of feeling more into like, no, we're talking total dissolution. We're not talking like, I know that, we're gonna be feeding the tulips after this, so it's all good. We'll just let it compost. No, you don't know that when you're in the compost.
I
You
don't
know?
remember who it was, but I think some teacher or somebody once said, like, you don't eat the compost.
Yes.
It may have been Dare who said that. Um, yeah. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just really hearing like the nose and then the like dissolution, like the having to really dissolve and not have nothing really on either end to hold on to.
Yeah, and it's like, thank you so much for this is such an awesome conversation. I'm getting so much out of this.
Good. Yeah, me too.
Um, uh, this like very close up feeling in my life in the last couple like months especially has just been this like immensely complicated game of various limitations that is
Yeah.
like I turn this way and there's a wall and I turn
Yeah.
this way and there's a wall and then I try and go downwards and there and just that and the piece about that is that simultaneous to being in that like layer of capitalist reality, over the last like especially 3 years, I've been really deepening into animist practice.
Yeah.
And like so much of that like somatic ritual practice is about dissolving into the wider body and bringing whatever is stuck or contracted or feels like too much to the holding of this whole wider ecosystem. And so I'm not going to make it like, oh, well, I was really stuck and then I practiced my thing and now it's all, but actually a huge part of what has shifted energetically for me has been more and more since around the solstice I started to play with this, and then it's like kind of continued to shift, bringing the practice in very specific like guided somatic containers, like recordings of Larissa Call, like is somebody I often will like return to their recordings. um, uh, Bringing those things into my daily life. So simultaneous with that like limitation game, I've also been playing with for the last like month or so of like almost every morning, like turning on this 90-minute recording of of Larissa doing what's it called? You feeling me, feeling you. It's
Yeah.
like beautiful ecosystemic emergent practice of feeling body and feeling gravity and buoyancy and radiant ancestors and like inviting all these different elements of the ecosystem to notice each other,
Yeah.
and not doing that while like doing a practice for 90 minutes. Not that my practice looks like that, but like turning it on, getting out of bed and like doing my dishes, or not doing my dishes, but like sitting in the messy kitchen and trying to like piece together some food, or, just like having that on in the background and seeing if I can still practice
Yeah.
while being in the like just the mess and complexity of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm playing like there's this idea of field containers, as like I've also been playing with it like in moments of inertia where I am like sitting in a chair and just feel really stuck and I need to get up and do a thing, and I just like my whole body is just like I cannot move, and playing with like turning on a recording, and letting that different like presence, even like a recording of myself guiding the ecosystem spoons group.
Ah, what a
Feeling,
great self-gift.
yeah, like feeling that energetic shifting of like a different nervous system state, a different form of perception, opening that freeze or that overwhelm into just this wider web.
Yeah. There are a few things I could go off of that, but I wonder if for some listeners, if you could expand a little on what you mean by animist.
Ooh, fun. Okay. Um, Where do I want to start today? Okay, I'll just tell you about what my house looks like right now.
Awesome.
Um, so around my house, I have these different altars. So I have an area in my bedroom, which is this like altar to this kind of this sense of like primordial center, hearth fire, erotic life force. Um, and in my living room, I can show the video. Watch it.
Oh yeah.
Like a kind of collective ecosystemic altar for like these different beings I'm in relationship with of supporting stone, fluid field, and mycelial mind. And I have a space where I do ancestral offerings to my wise-rooted ancestors and to the trickster beings, because I found it's very important to feed them also. And like, so that's just kind of the ecosystem. And then I have spaces both in my bedroom and in my like art studio living room where I can lay down and have pillows and roll around on the floor and practice. So that a lot of kind of how I live my life is all like check in with those different spaces. And there's like a kind of audio landscape on my phone of, you know, as I was talking about, like these different field recordings where like can kind of drop into this sense of ritual space and invite in these different presences. So that's, let's see, I'm trying to do a thing as talking about this, and I'm not sure if I can actually weave it right. But I also walk by the river every day. So I live right next to the Mississippi River, and I will go out and I will greet the river as my grandmother, because that's how she feels to me. And we'll walk by her. We'll often speak about like what's moving in my life and what feels difficult. There's a sculpture of a turtle that when I moved in here almost a year ago, like turtles have been like this deep wisdom teacher in my life for many years. And I moved here, and like right down the road from me, there's a turtle sculpture. It's like the only sculpture anywhere nearby.
Yeah.
And so it's, the distance is exactly what my body can walk without getting too exhausted. So on like, and I've like measured it of like where is exhaustion for me. And so I will walk to that turtle sculpture and kiss it and talk to it a little bit, and then say thank you, beauty, to the whole ecosystem, to the river, and go home. And there's a cottonwood tree that's a little bit further, which on good days when I have energy, I walk to, who I will sit under and sing with. And my bathtub is also this like amazing animist practice tool. Yeah. Like, you know, I'll like practice a lot of audio recordings and sing in there. And when all I have mermaids, when I have like a couple times a month, I have migraines that last like 24 hours, and you know, we'll just like be in the bathtub for like most of that time, or in bed, you know, with like a heat pack. And yeah, so it like that, I don't know if that, hopefully that touches it a bit of just like, I don't know that answers what it is, but it answers how I like am like engaging with it.
Yeah, I think that's the best kind of, I mean, you are showing, not telling. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's such a beautiful illustration of, I would say, the simplicity, not the easiness perhaps, but the simplicity, or the, like there are complex threads, but it's not, but it's very innate, you know, it's gonna feel very.
And I also can I follow on with, I am a person who like, I both love and hate structure. I like absolutely, for most of my life, could not do external structure if there was any form of like control or force. So that means I can't do yoga, like right now, I can't do yoga. I can't do like most of the structured practices that like want your body, or even like even breathing practices are sometimes really hard if somebody guides that,
Yeah.
because my body with the chronic illness, with the other, like just is so, has just particular rhythms and movements that are happening. And so all of the like the embodied practice I do is about being able to drop in and meet what is there, and then have really subtle bringing forms of movement or sound to that.
Yeah.
um, and this like ritual landscape in my house, my life, has like it, it's kind of grown and evolved. So there was a while where like I had an altar, and I like would be very overwhelmed. I'd feel like I have to go sit at my altar, and I'm not sitting at my altar, and like I'm a bad person because I'm not doing my practice.
That animation. Yeah.
And over time, there's like been this whole practice of like meeting the resistance and not overriding it, and like listening for like starting to listen for like where the actual impulses come in.
Yeah.
um and over time this webbing has happened where like I don't sit with every altar every day, I don't give food to my ancestors every day, I don't like, I'm not a very good consistent practitioner in a lot of ways. But what I am doing is like I'm listening for where the aliveness is in my system and my web of relationships.
Yeah.
um
God. Yes. So I feel like this could open up a whole nother conversation, um, which maybe I'll just plant the seed for, because
okay.
we've had so much good stuff already in time, and I want to honor your time. Um, but what that really opens up for me as a particularly as a practitioner, and I'm curious how you have encountered this or navigate this. I mean, also, both as a practitioner and facilitator, I can say that there have been, like, I've had to unlearn the need for structure.
Mm.
And I find a lot of, particularly coming from a yoga background as a yoga teacher for 10 years, um, and I don't know if this is particularly cultural, but like the it was very clear how many people, and maybe it's just, they're attracted to this modality for this reason, but like many people need um really specific structure, and any kind of open space, like, okay, now just move how your body wants to move, was very disorienting, or like kind of paralyzing or fear inducing for people. um that, I mean, that can happen, and I have found in my community, like, I don't, maybe I've been overly um expectant of that reaction, but I've had to kind of like coach people towards
Yes.
that, like, wait, what do you mean do what my body wants to do? Like, I'm here for you to tell me what to do. Like, we're very primed for following directions, and not very primed for being with our own impulses. So, yeah, if there's anything maybe
Yeah,
in short you want to respond to in that.
I would love to. Yeah, because that's like the kind of the center of my practice a lot, is this sense of like, I think that's so developmentally lacking for most of the people within colonized reality.
Yeah.
um, is that we have, because our caregivers and the adults around us like have not had access to that kind of, to that process themselves, like they weren't able to model it and provide that kind of, so like yeah, okay. Yes, there was like a so on a, yeah, I feel like it goes back to that sense of like, is the empty, is the silence
Yeah.
around you empty or filled?
Yes.
You know, is it this like flat thing that's just like super uncomfortable and grating, you know, or which is part of it. It's not that it's not actually that it is this or it is
Yeah.
that. And that's
Yes.
the perceptual thing. And it's actually that we have to like, yeah, I love playing here, and I also like get kind of overstimulated by like all of the things that are here. But the for me, what has completely shifted my practice and my ability to be with my body has been having that very kind of nuanced guidance and scaffolding from other people whose nervous systems are already able to do that.
Yeah.
So Liz Cook, Larissa Call, Bree Greenberg Benjamin, like are three people that learned that with, and then Chris Norris, the somatic practitioner that like I've received work from,
Yeah.
and with all of them, what's like different about the practices is they're these invitations, and the thing that I call a field container, which I'm really exploring, like is the core of my practice also, and how I hold space, is the container itself is an invitation to drop into your own body, to the wider webbing of relationships. And then this kind of energetic scaffolding, you know, of like, and it's super tactile and sensory and specific, of like, Larissa, you know, talks about like feeling your body held by gravity, feeling gravity and buoyancy. Something that I do in my practice a lot is inviting people to bring touch to their bodies.
Yeah.
And, you know, literally just that feeling of like, what do your edges feel like? Where does your body want touch? And feeling how sound wants to move, like audible exhales, or like
Yeah.
and it's a permission, it's like a nervous system permission to start to open up these pathways of expression that the culture has closed down.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I feel like there's like a whole world there, which I'm so excited to like keep exploring and inviting people into, because what I've experienced throughout that process is my ability to be with myself, both inside of those containers and when I'm, you know, just with myself, has shifted and complexified, and there's more nuance, and there's just like, I've been saying this for like the past 5 months when I've had like phone calls with my mentor of like, I like my body trusts me now. My body actually, like, yes, my life is really overwhelming and other things are happening, but my organism is with myself now. And I feel that like my body trusts me to listen to like what is being shared.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, if even small tendrils of like the wider culture and more people could be supported to be in that attunement, I think things would
Yeah.
start to
That
shift
is
in
so
different
huge.
ways. Yeah.
Just take that in.
It also like, I just want to give this like one image that like came with me in a healing session I received a long time ago, and just like my body that trusts me is a lot like this like puppy.
Oh.
You know, like this like really like adoring dog, excited to be in the world energy.
Uh-huh.
And that's like when I kind of turn towards my system, like that's the engagement that comes back, is like this like, you know, yeah.
I love that. And just like, I guess what I got, the hit I got from that was like this innocence and the impulse towards, you know, like there's a like a pure, I mean, we could say erotic, but it's part of, and it's part of this like innocent original innocence, not like in a purity, not pure sense, but like the impulse towards connection, like the impulse towards, which feels so alive, and then elicits a response. I can imagine, you know, how you greet a puppy. Like it elicits this like reciprocal just impulse to connect. So that's so beautiful and so not the dominant narrative of relating specifically to body, but then also to so much of life.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, is there anything else you would want to leave listeners for with, or anything that feels lingering?
Hmm. Just a lot of kindness, um, and just invitation into gentleness for whatever is moving in people's lives.
Yeah.
That just in the moments when it's possible to pause, to slow down, to just like let there be more space around whatever needs a little more space.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and that I deeply believe that we can grow that culture together,
Mm.
where there's more possibility and more can be included. Um, and the piece around this connection to land, to ancestors, to these wider field energies.
Mm.
I feel like most of our ancestors knew this kind of wider web of capacity beyond the human, and that
Mhm.
like emotions and hard things like would be held in this wider structure, um, through ritual, through creative expression, through daily life rhythms, through connection, through all the things.
Yeah.
um, and just that like we can like that is like what I'm hearing is like that is accessible to us still, and that is something we can grow together as a culture.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm just hearing that as you know, the blessing to those guides and beings and the gratitude back out to the web. And so that feels really fitting for our close. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kate. This was just
Yeah.
delicious. I'm like delightfully surprised by all the places.
Good. Yeah, me too. I have been finding these to be so fun and rich and like learning for me and really generative. So I'm so thankful to you too. And I'll just say for folks listening, I'll link all of the ways you can connect with Shante and both support her as well as connect to her work and learn from her and with her. So I hope you'll check out her work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.